りおしまい。
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Get the Mic, the only show where your host on the left, Owl,
and your host on the right, Brock,
dissect fiction for its mythological significance. On this episode, we're talking about Dragon Ball as usual, and I will actually be consistent on updating the episode banner at the top. As you can see, it's actually correct this time, and it says The Ultimate Sacrifice. I know our last episode didn't even have one. It was just an orange bar. For obvious reasons, I did not put the right episode name up there.
Definitely not.
So, although, yeah, we won't mention it anymore. Maybe we'll talk about it one day when we're on a different color background, we'll say. So, before we get started, though, if you like what you hear in the show, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel. We upload new episodes Mondays and Thursdays to YouTube and Tuesdays and Fridays to Rumble. So please check us out on those platforms. Without further ado, this is Dragon Ball episode 117, The Ultimate Sacrifice. So Goku has miraculously survived the trial of the Chojinsui, revealing that he is feeling brimming with power. After thanking the darkness, he declares to Yaj that he knows the way out. Pulling out the power pole, he extends it, launching them out of the cave. Meanwhile, Piccolo continues to antagonize humanity, issuing the end of justice, and for citizens to be as violent as they wish. This causes mass mayhem and hysteria, with theft and murder reigning supreme. The prisoners are breaking out of jail, and they're going to break other prisoners out of jail. It's not a good time, and it's broadcast all throughout the world, which is why I put in there that he antagonizes humanity, because it really is the whole world he is antagonizing. I don't think there's a better word for it than antagonizing.
Yeah, well, that's what Piccolo has done by putting himself at the very tip top of the hierarchy. Is that all of his interactions are with humanity itself instead of necessarily a person. And that's kind of what is happening also, of course, in Goku's story here at the offset, which is that he's essentially taking on the responsibility of humanity by becoming superhuman, so to speak.
And by accepting all that we talked about last time and all that the Chojinsui means.
Right.
And so, it is a good parallel. There's a lot of parallels in this episode. Not as much in the next, but this episode has some good parallels as well, like we were talking about last episode. But I do want to mention here that Goku thanks the darkness. He has an appreciation for the wisdom that can be sought out of the deepest chaos one can find himself or herself in. And that appreciation is, I think it's played here because it actually shows us why Goku was able to survive that experience, is because he is an incarnation of the rejuvenating spirit that exists from encountering the unknown. And down here, the unknown in what has become known, where he says, I can see the path there, right, is that ultimate suffering that we talked about last time in the Chojinsui.
Yeah, the voluntary acceptance of ultimate suffering for the sake of everyone but yourself is sort of that he's stepping more and more along that path, right? And that was the sort of the setup for this whenever we started the last episode with Yajirobe saying, I can't believe you would do something like this for other people, and that's why their paths
Yes.
diverge, right?
Yes.
And so the real operant part of it is the fact that it is for humanity. I mean, it's ultimately external.
Yeah, it's the hoisting of all of the poison, almost poison of the world, and being enlightened by the fact that it even exists. Especially as Goku wouldn't really understand that, even with his current corn training. Like, encountering Piccolo once, when he did, is not going to give him the full experience that he needs to be able to do it.
And part of that reason that you pointed out the first time we did it was that he did not bring the Noibo the first time,
Yes,
and the Noibo is necessary for him to be able to
100%. And we're going
reconnect
to
with who
see,
he is now in reality, outside of in sort of the spiritual sense or in the metaphysical sense, right?
even, let's say, post-paternal world, in this post-paternal world, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, he didn't bring it. And he, as we'll see in the next couple episodes, he absolutely needs it for this encounter. And we'll get into the reasons why when we really see what it does. Anything else you want to say here? I do want to mention that the Noibo getting them out of here, him seeing the path, him realizing that the evils of the world exist, and that he has to kind of hoist that cross, right? And that's why there were all those crosses in the beginning. Um, and so he is able then to rely on his ancestral spirit to guide him out of this this cave. And I think the reason, I don't even want to say I think the reason for that is because the what propels one forward after that rebirthing process is an appreciation for the, let's say, process by which you got there. And so here it's kind of similar to the idea of finding, let's even take Pinocchio. In Pinocchio, when he encounters his father in the belly of the whale, right? What his father does is inspire him to create the fire that gets them out of there, propels him out. And that's exactly what is happening here, but with the Noibo symbolically standing in for that.
Right, the spirit of the father within the belly of the whale will sort of equip the hero with the motivation, the fire,
Well,
the
first by pointing out flaws, which we already saw the imitation Roshi try to do.
right. Tried
And
to appeal to his moral weakness.
and that's the first thing Geppetto says to Pinocchio is, "Oh my, your ears." He says, "Oh, these I've got a tail too," and then he brays like a jackass,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it is a very the beats are there, and so he needs to use the Noibo to get out of the cave itself, and we'll see how he gets out, because he's not out of the woods yet. They still have to get back through the labyrinth. But
But
Goku,
I do like that connection though with Pleasure Island, right? Because I mean, the Kame House is the opposite of Pleasure
well,
Island,
that's
and
literally what
for
Piccolo
the
makes the
boys,
world Pleasure Island,
yeah.
right?
But there's a parallel to that because the reason that Roshi was killed and the reason that he went and stood up to Piccolo, he told him was because he couldn't live a life of pleasure with him out in the world, right? And it's sort of it's interesting because that's what he's done as a hermit is isolate himself to be able to indulge in his pleasures and indefinitely. It rains down on the world, that the world becomes that pleasure island. And so it's like setting the father's house in
Yes.
order is sort of the whole
Uh-huh.
concept of what he's doing by going down in here and into the deepest recesses, into
It's
the
not just
darkness.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so yeah, the appreciation for the pattern or the thread that ties him to his ancestry is the thing that helps him elevate his spirit out of the depths of despair.
Exactly. And I was gonna say too, the destruction of the mansion in Pleasure Island, um, the idea of that, which is the lowering of the human spirit, making beasts out of man, let's say, is actually the same thing that Piccolo's trying to do here. And that's why I'm making
Yeah.
there's such a strong comparison between uh, the symbolism in that story and this one at this point. Not to say Goku's not a real boy, because he is definitely he's gone through that water trial, right? That Pinocchio goes through at the end, where Pinocchio drowns, and I want to make this very clear to everyone, anyone that's listening. Pinocchio drowns in that movie as a wooden boy. He drowns face down in the water. That's how he dies. There's no other way he dies. He doesn't suddenly have a heart attack like right as that's happening, because he's a wooden boy. He drowns in the water. Anyway, so Goku's already gone past this water trial in the Chojinsui. So he this is kind of him realizing he needs to. I guess this is more of whenever Pinocchio's like realizing they need to get out of the whale and that his father's worth saving, and so Goku now has to arrange Kame House in order, which is like sprawled out into this uh, uncontrollable chaos.
hmm In response, really quick though, to the Pinocchio drowning, you know why it's important that he can drown, right?
Yeah, because I mean they walk around underwater before that.
Yeah.
It's not. I yes.
But the loss of spirit and Numa,
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
animating Numa for
Well,
what Pinocchio is.
I mean, and that's the thing. I wouldn't even explain it in those terms, but that's exactly it, because of the water being as a medium, right? To have that representation of the death of the spirit and the revival of it through the water
Yeah, that's like baptism.
is yeah, yeah.
It is a bigger pattern, and so
Mhm.
to say that it's just like, oh, he died to blunt force trauma is not the same thing as like a water death rebirth.
But you don't see any evidence of that. He's literally lying down face down, and people are going to try and argue with me that he did not drown. Anyways,
I just wanted to point out it wasn't entirely just arbitrary.
yes, no, it definitely isn't. And the death rebirth through that water is, and you can think of it too. Ooh, you can think of it too as in the yin and yang. It's that because water is that fluid, that chaos, right? It's not, you can't pin it down. It's not orderly, and it can be held in a cup. It can be confined, but it is
But it itself
it
has
is
to
the
be,
it
well,
is the
frozen to be.
right. And in symbolic terms, it's often used for the unconscious and for things that are not known for that exact reason, right? Like Pinocchio goes down into the depths of the unknown, and he drowns because he's encountering is overwhelming to his being. And so he has to die. His spirit has to die to be reborn in incorporating the new knowledge that he's gained.
Exactly.
So I wouldn't explain it exactly with the Numa and all that, but yes,
But
it's
yeah,
the
the
same exact
symbolism
thing.
of spirit, especially with him
Hmm.
being a puppet that's got no strings, right? Now he's animated by spirit, like the spirit of
Yes,
as God breathes life into Adam. So
precisely.
anyway,
And so that's Pinocchio, everyone. Thanks for watching the show.
now it's really get the mic.
Now it's really get the mic. But yeah, I mean that's all. That's all exactly why Goku almost dies here. It's why Goku dies at the beginning of the arc. Dies at the beginning of the arc. His encounter with Piccolo is such that his spirit cannot function as it was. Right? It's no longer alive, no longer animated. Goku, however, had already had some intonations though of that rebirth process, and I think that's another reason why he actually does live through that. But I think we're ready to move on from this, right? Maybe.
Well,
Yeah, I think we are.
sort of. Before we move on, since this is the last we're going to see of the effects of the water on Goku, I want to bring it back
Oh, we'll
around.
talk about it in his fight, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean specifically his encounter down here in the cave.
Hmm.
Um, so we talked about before the with this specifically being the world tree. I had mentioned that there was the idea of the knowledge of good and evil being attached to a tree, right? Being attached to one world tree, and the second world tree being the tree of eternal life, right?
Mm.
And there are two trips up the world tree here in Dragon Ball, where the first one is tied into Goku's integration of malice into his being, right? Now, he starts the path of understanding the knowledge of good and evil, but I don't think he
Yes.
gets there until his first trip up the tower whenever he gets the first water,
And
right?
so, as above, right?
Yes.
And yeah, I know where you're
And
going. Go
and he
ahead.
gets so to go beyond that whenever he experiences this faux death, right? Which a lot of people wouldn't really understand why Goku is essentially killed but not killed, and he can't affect the world in any way
Well, it's
until he's
because they
brought up the
think they're
tree.
like, oh, Toriyama wanted to make it dramatic because this is just a power up.
Right, but in reality, Goku is killed by his first encounter with Piccolo and needs to be brought up the second tree, the tree of eternal life, so that Goku can supersede what it means to be a person in an individual sense and
Would
to gain that archetypal idea of eternal life, which is not literal.
and to not unconsciously sheathe his sword, but actually consciously sheathe the malice that he knows exists in the world. Because with the Uzaru, right, that's an unconscious expression of that. But say what you said, the last part again.
Well, the idea ultimately about the archetypal eternal life, which is
Okay, yeah, right. So oh no, I don't have it. Wait.
well, let me expand a bit and
Go
it might
ahead.
come to
Go
you.
ahead.
So
Yeah,
the
it probably
archetypal
will.
eternal life, meaning that what my interpretation of heaven and eternal life and all of that is that it's the realm of idea, so to speak. So Goku is an idea now. He has by climbing the tree twice now becomes the tree that people gaze
Not
upon in a
I
sense.
would agree with you in the concept, but I don't think that's happened yet. I think after this arc, that's when Goku.
He's gained the ability to be that
There we go.
by
Okay.
doing this, I should
Yes.
say.
Yeah.
He hasn't accomplished it yet, but he has gained the status in his spirit, in his mode of being, that now he could do that. And
And so
what
now
that means is superhuman. That means
yes.
superordinate to what it means to be doing good deeds just as a man. But this is as a people. This is the human spirit sort of being hoisted upon him, like we had said, and that gives eternal life. In the same way that, like in the Christian tradition, it says that if you live a good life, you'll have eternal life. And that's to say that your idea, who you are, the concept of you, lives on and affects the world in a good way forever. Right.
Even in a microcosm, right? Yeah, because it everything is
And the vice versa, the hell
cumulative.
analogy, of course, is that you make the world worse and your idea suffers. The idea of you suffers over time, right? Because you were not oriented towards the good. And so because you as a person are not just a body, right? You're not just an actor, but you are an idea in everyone else's minds. And so to say that archetypally you're living in heaven or hell, I interpret that to be that you, beyond your physical capabilities as a conscious agent, go on into the future, beyond into a cosmic sense, right? And so yeah, this is gaining the ability to be transpersonal, gaining that superhuman strength in physical strength, but also in the sense that he's
But that's
that
only
strength of
because
an
that's
idea
how
and a
it's
spirit.
manifest in the show.
Yeah,
That's how
it's the only way to show it,
the
really,
idea is expressed.
in this sense. For
Well,
the show.
it's a really good way to express it, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so effective.
I still don't remember what I was gonna say.
Damn.
I know. It was before you were talking about that. It was when we were talking about the knowledge of good and evil. Oh man. No, I don't remember. It's okay. It'll come to me
On the re-listen.
on the re-listen because I'll be able to hear back the specific thing that triggered it. I'm triggered now. Just kidding. All right, so I think we can move on from this now.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah. I just wanted to tie in that idea of what is different about him now that he's gotten up from this,
Yes.
and why he thanks the darkness for it. You
And
know,
why he can see the path, why he knows what he needs to do. And that's the thing when people
and that's what
feel
he had lost before. We said he was not able to walk to get here because he no longer had his path,
well,
and
his
the
path
Nimbus
was
had been
he
destroyed.
destroyed his own path because of vengeance.
Exactly.
And so yeah,
So yeah, now he can see the path, and the path out is related to the Noibo.
and that's the first little instance we'll get of it, but we'll talk about that more. So let's go ahead and continue here. So 8chan, arrives via a red country truck only to find the king's city in complete catastrophe, as there's a giant crater made by Piccolo. A group of youths riding motorcycles and seemingly embracing Piccolo's reign venture out to loot the rubble of the city. They run into Ader, who clowns on them and makes them agree.
He makes clowns on them,
making them agree to help the wounded people of the city.
I think clowns on them
happened.
is the perfect way to put it, though.
He definitely does. Like, these are the foolish adversarial spirits that are almost Piccolo's spawn more than his actual Piccolo spawn. And they try to write demon on their shirts, but one of them doesn't know how to spell demon.
I know it's like the idiot trying to make a swastika and doesn't know which way to go,
and it's like, the other way, or it's like derpy or something.
Like
yeah,
two
exactly.
points pointing at each other on the corner.
And so that's how we know they're fools, right? And so when they get here to loot the rubble, like to capitalize on other suffering, Ader, who we've already. Well, actually, it's interesting we bring up Pinocchio because Ader has a bit of that spark in him, more or less, as in he had to grapple with the fact of being an android, let's say, and so now
and being a tool of an ideological process that's destructive that
he needed to find his own purpose, and he needed to individuate like those things.
Like the fact that he has this scar shows that he's the real deal versus them, right? Whereas they're like wearing the clothes. It's like, no, they've been in my brain.
Right, exactly. And so they try to challenge him with malice. One of them pulls out a knife and it's like, I can hurt you. And Ader's like, get out of here.
No, you can't.
You will help these people. And they're like, hey, which way is it again? Like, so I just wanted to mention this for a couple of reasons. We see that Sano is trying to take care of these people, having given up on the idea of getting vengeance or killing Piccolo, even though that is something that she would do had she but the tools to do it, thanks to Piccolo. And then the other thing is these spawn. I wanted to mention how they are basically demon possessed, let's say.
Yes. That's kind of why I mentioned like they've been in my head, right? The Red Ribbon Army has been inside Ader's brain and programmed him to do things, and he refused it, right?
Yeah.
And so the refusal of being programmed or possessed to carry out the deeds of a tyrannical order, that is ultimately what Piccolo's reign is, because he's imposing chaos. He's not just allowing it to happen organically, right?
Sure.
And so, yeah, he has already completely integrated the idea of this just by the nature of his being, by the first time we see him.
And how he doesn't want to fight, right? Exactly. Yeah. And that's why he's seen as like a defect and all that. But we talked about Ader, so let's go ahead. I just wanted to mention those two bits, really. Or those 3 bits. Talk about Sano a little bit, the ruffians and Ader. Back in the wasteland, Tien sees the chaos of Piccolo as well. From his plane, he can see the TV where Piccolo's basically laughing. It's great because they play. I don't know if this is in the Japanese. Actually, it might be. I think it's in both. So while Piccolo's talking on the broadcasting everywhere in the world, it's just playing this kind of intense music, and it's just Piccolo laughing though the whole time. And so when Tien looks at it, he's just laughing. He's like,
he's like, ha ha ha.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it was a funny thing to me. I just wanted to mention it, but that is not mythological analysis. But he does see the chaos that Piccolo is causing, and the Goku also sees that, with Launch remarking that Tien is probably their only hope. Having mastered the Mafaba, Tien prepares to leave the wastes and confront Piccolo head on. As a last attempt, though, Yamcha calls out to Tien, to which the latter responds, saying goodbye, and Launch laments their loss. He says, holding hands, that's as far as we got. And so here, this sets up the whole reason why the episode is titled The Ultimate Sacrifice. Actually, we were talking about this before
Right.
we started. And it's because Tien knows he's going to die, and he's ready to give the ultimate sacrifice. And this is the point where it would need to be made anyways, because Piccolo has raised the stakes again, and now he's going to start massacring people just to see them afraid, right? Just to see. Oh no, not yet. We'll get to that. So he's freeing them, and we're gonna talk about that next episode. But so he leaves to go do it, and he's ready to give his life, and basically says goodbye to his friends, and Launch accepts his death, all that stuff. And we realize that it's really Goku, and that's how the scene transitions to, is to Goku running out of the labyrinth. It's up to Goku to stop Tien from sacrificing his life when Goku can actually step up and create order out of the world again.
Right. And we'll definitely get that more in the next episode as far as how that plays into why Piccolo is ultimately not Goku, like why he's not the hero that's supposed to be fighting
Tien,
against.
you mean?
I mean, Tien is not the one that's supposed to be fighting against Piccolo.
Yeah.
We talked about that a little bit before,
especially because he's LARPing right now.
Yeah.
As a master, as a spiritual father, he's LARPing. That's the best I could say.
Exactly.
And so anything else you want to say here?
It's just funny. Launch's thirst for Tien.
Oh yeah.
And she's like, I hate to see you go, but I love to watch you walk away. Like,
yeah.
that's Launch's whole idea.
But that is, I mean, she's pretty Spartan in her way. Like,
yeah,
come back with your shield or on it, right? Like, she's it's good. It's good with it. And so she does lament their loss. Like, she accepts it before anyone else. And like Yamcha is starting to be like, I want to go help him, and it really shows the wisdom of Launch in this instance. And so, like I said, the last thing we see is Goku running out of the labyrinth, and him and Yajirobe find the jar, and they call up to Korin to get him out. The cat master meows and returns them to his tower. He literally says meow.
Meow.
Goku, becoming serious, faces Piccolo's direction, impressing even Korin. At last, the old master gives Goku a new Nimbus cloud. And finally, as Goku races towards Piccolo, Tien does the same, and the stage is set for the final battle of this arc. And that's kind of where we end. There's a couple things I do want to say about this last part, not necessarily Korin meowing, but the way Goku gets out of the cave is his most primordial, or actually even let's say this, the way that Goku is able to get access to the Chojinzui is through his current spiritual father. To get out of the cave is his oldest ancestral father, and now the spiritual father that he's currently subordinating himself to. The idea of Korin is what gets him out of the last part, right? It's all along the way. So that's one thing I want to say. And then the other thing is Goku being able to sense energy now.
Yes.
So this is kind of the first time we see this in Dragon Ball proper. Like, there's been a little bit of it with, like, Roshi being like, I sense the Crane Hermit around or whatever. But this is really the first time when we see it in any kind of plot and intrinsic action. And so Goku turns to face Piccolo without knowing where he is, seemingly. And it's because Goku knows all the evil that can exist in the world and all the evil in all the evils is being capped off or capstoned even in the upper echelons of the hierarchies as Piccolo. And so knowing both that, and he kind of gets an intonation of it whenever Roshi dies, the first sensing of power, let's say. Knowing that, he's able to assert that is what he needs to eliminate, let's say. That's the realm of ideas that's kind of beckoning him forward.
I was going to say the same thing. He sees across space to an
Yes.
idea, right? He doesn't have to physically be there to interface with Piccolo's energy. He can interface with it
It's
as an
funny.
idea from
I'm
anywhere.
curious what you would think about that, and maybe this is nothing because I'm not too versed on it, but that idea of him seeing that point of intersection or that cross, let's say. How does that relate to ley lines?
Oh, I have no idea.
Because those also intersect like that, and they're supposedly right where those spiritual springs come from in the Hermetic order.
Mm.
So, interestingly, though, it's like that, and Goku can now see those kinds of ideas, see them, right? He knows where they are, because of his experience with the Chojinsu and
And
all we said about
a
that.
somewhat better way to frame it also within the show is that he doesn't just get given the Nimbus Cloud, but he pulls a piece off for himself.
Yeah, it's not the one Roshi gave him.
Right. And that's
It's his
because
own.
he can find the way, right?
Yes.
And that's part of why he can sense people outside of himself, right? And why he would be able to sense Ki now is that he himself can do that mapping
Well, look,
on a higher level.
I was gonna say mapping as well
Yeah.
because now what has happened is so the first lesson of Korin is how to map any individual, right? But this is mapping the patterns of the world and integrating those. And so when you see the patterns of the world, that's why I brought up ley lines.
Well,
is
not
'cause
only
those are
that,
the supposed patterns of
because
the world.
because we can also talk about conscious and unconscious in a sense, because it's always the inventions that Bulma can interface with that let him map out where something is in the world.
Yes.
And they still need that for the Dragon Balls, right? But there is a similar technology that we see later on, which is the Scouters, and Bulma is able to work with Scouters, and this is part of that idea that it's
Yes.
an unconscious part of that chaotic unconscious black half of the yin and yang.
Mm-hmm.
And Goku, as we just saw, integrated his Uzeru such that there's no excess anymore. The ultimate version of Grandpa Gohan ripping off his tail, he has his tail still and has it integrated.
Yes.
This is a different thing than that.
And it's to say that he no longer needs the paternal spirit to remove those barriers. Now he can, because that's what Grandpa Gohan did by removing the tail, right?
Right.
And so now he can face up to all the evil that exists in the world. He's gone through that trial, and he knows that he needs to redeem the mistakes of, let's say, his spiritual father and the super spiritual father Mutaito, right? He needs to actually compete with this idea and not just seal it away.
Yes. He needs to be able to stand up to it honestly instead of putting it somewhere where it's not acknowledged.
Right. And so that's also what he has to stop Tien from doing, because Tien's trying to do that right now with his ultimate sacrifice. Anything else?
No, but I think that is, you had mentioned it when we talked before, but putting it into those terms, this is that ultimate sacrifice, which is that it goes to a higher level than Tien, and we'll see that especially in the next episode. But that Piccolo is an idea, and Goku has now entered the realm of idea, and Tien has not. He is not a spiritual father,
and that it's not necessary to make the ultimate sacrifice anymore for anyone, because Goku can bear that suffering, and so that's why it's called the ultimate sacrifice. I don't even know if the English translators knew any of that, but they're probably just like, let's do it.
It's probably like the next episode should have been called that, and then it got shifted back.
Yeah,
but
I mean, we've seen ones like that before. It's like Goku versus someone, and it doesn't happen that episode. But anyways, I think this is a good place to leave off.
Yeah, I think so. I really like that. The whole concept of Korin Because Roshi says that Korin gave him the Nimbus, right?
Yes.
He didn't carve off the Nimbus for himself. Like
Correct.
he didn't grab the cloud out of the sky for himself to ride on. And that's
I
it's
mean,
sort
we
of
aren't
like
even
there's
sure
a
that he was ever able to ride it.
right. Well, he has the understanding that there is the path, right? And he commands it, but it's not his path, right? It was a path that was given to him by a spiritual father that Goku has already superseded, admitted by Korin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to see now Goku can step into the realm of doing those things that are a higher order than what Roshi did.
And yeah, and we see how he is already superseding the actions of Roshi. Not
Mhm.
only from getting the divine water, the sacred water, in less time, but now we also see that he can carve out his own path. And the path forward is not one of vengeance, but one of
Justice and peace.
justice. There we go. That's a good word for it, especially because justice is what Piccolo is most against.
And so here it is.
And we're about to get to it. So, yeah. If you enjoyed what you heard, please give us a like. Subscribe to our channel with that red subscribe button. We upload new episodes Mondays and Thursdays to YouTube, Tuesdays and Fridays to Rumble, so check us out on those websites. I'm your host on the left, Al.
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
And it's been a good episode. Hope you guys have a good night.